Wide open, top of the arc, three is good, and the 18th assist from Giannis.
Live from the Annex Wealth Management Studios, here's Justin Garcia.
Yeah, not much more to say about this one than Giannis. It is a technicality in play, I suppose, but it's the third time in NBA history that we've seen 35, 20, 15 on the stat line. Nikola Jokic and Wilt Chamberlain have both achieved that. It is the first time ever in the near 80-year history of this league that the 20 was assists. So you had a player score 35 or more points with 20 or more assists and 15 or more rebounds. First time that has ever happened. And Giannis Antetokounmpo does it tonight in a much-needed win. Let's not sugarcoat that against the Philadelphia 76ers, 126-113. 20 assists, a new career high from Giannis. And the Bucks win on a night where the Pistons were idle. Detroit lost last night to Oklahoma City. So the Bucks are back to fifth in the Eastern Conference standings. Went through the schedule that was out there in the next couple of days and really the rest of the ways. We've reached that point of the calendar where you have 6 games remaining for all of these teams. Still a couple of challenges left for the Pistons and the Pacers. But while the 4 seed is not mathematically impossible, it's still on the table for the Bucks. Does really feel like time is starting to run out there. 3 games, couple of games you would look at down the stretch and say, man, if only you could have got that one. Down the stretch, I mean a week or so ago, if only you could have got that one. That 4-game losing streak, especially. You go 2-2 in that stretch, or even 1-3, and how much different things are when it's 2 games you have to make up versus 3. Not impossible, but going to be incredibly challenging for the Bucks to do. As of right now, the Indiana Pacers with a 92% chance to be the 4 seed in the Eastern Conference. Cavs and Celtics both 99% chance to finish where they're currently slated at 1-2. Knicks with a 98% chance. So we know 1, 2, and 3 are going to be the Cavs, the Celtics, and the Knicks. And a 92%, I think at this point you can almost call it and say the Pacers are going to be the 4 seed. It comes down to the Bucks and the Pistons. Who is going to finish 5th? Who's going to finish 6th? And in doing so, who's going to get Indiana in the first round? Who's going to get the New York Knicks in the first round of the playoffs? 800-990-3776, the number to join us tonight on Bucks Talk as we're on ESPN Milwaukee. And a lot to dig into with this historic performance from Giannis. It is 2 straight games now. We're talking about a historic performance by the team or an individual for this Bucks group. Oh, by the way, not to get lost in the shuffle of things, Doc Rivers didn't finish this game. It was in the second quarter that, as we heard from Darvin Ham, tapped him on the shoulder and said, wasn't feeling well, headed to the locker room, and Darvin Ham was the acting head coach for this one tonight. But after a dreadful start, where it was really starting to look scary, you just snapped a 4-game losing streak. You look at how things started, down by 17 early in this one to Philly, down by 14 at the end of the first quarter. I'm sure there was a lot of side-eyeing going on with a lot of Bucks fans looking at this score and wondering, what's going on with his team? But the final 3 quarters, exactly what you needed to see. Outscoring Philly 101-74. And obviously Giannis, the biggest piece of that. But there were more subplots to it. Some of the role players that we've seen continue to really shine for this Bucks group. 7 players tonight scoring in double figures. You nearly had 8. Kevin Porter Jr. fell just 2 points short of reaching double figures. But up and down, a strong performance by everybody that stepped on the floor. Yes, even Pat Connaughton, who continues to give this team some nice minutes here of late. And really, I think one of the bigger reasons we've seen this offense not completely fall into a rut and hit those lulls while you're playing without Damian Lillard for some specific reasons we'll get to in a moment. But a total team win tonight for the Bucks in efficiency. The story once again is as they set the franchise record shooting just under 69% a couple of days ago in that win against the Phoenix Suns, and now they set Giannis's personal best with 20 assists and move him into a class that includes just Nikola Jokic and Wilt Chamberlain is the only players to achieve a stat line similar to what Giannis did tonight in a game where that offense, we talked about keep an eye on the offense. It's probably too far gone to see start to finish fourth quarter offense and your offense as a whole move into the direction or into the top 10 that you'd like to see it at. So keep an eye on the post All-Star break offense and where that sits. Still some work to be done, but even in losses, we've seen some incredibly efficient performances from that Bucks offense of late, and that's certainly continued tonight in this much-needed win against the Philadelphia 76ers tonight, 126-113. 800-990-3776, the number to join us tonight on Bucks Talk. We'll take a look at where this offense currently ranks, some more numbers on Giannis's historic performance, and continue to take a look at the schedule ahead for all three of these teams, the Bucks, the Pistons, and the Indiana Pacers, and plenty of time to hear from you as well. We'll get to all of that coming up after this on Bucks Talk.
This is Bucks Talk.
For your next night out, revel in the fusion of artistry and flavor with sushi at St. Kate, offering guests an elevated experience where freshness and creativity converge in every bite. St. Kate the Arts Hotel introduces an exciting new sushi menu to its culinary repertoire. Indulge in the finest seafood, freshest ingredients, and expert craftsmanship for an inspired and delectable dining journey. Experience the art of sushi at St. Kate and learn more at stkatearts.com.
Draft day is approaching, and whether you're watching every pick or just there for the party, Higher Love has everything you need to elevate your draft experience. As the best in the Midwest, Higher Love offers the largest selection of organic, clean grain certified products at unbeatable value, making them the can't-miss top pick. Higher Love Menominee, an hour from Green Bay, right across the Wisconsin border. Find them at findhigherlove.com/CBD.
Hey, Gina, did you hear about the draft?
Wayne, there's no draft at Pella.
There's definitely a draft. Right, Wildy? Yeah, everybody's talking about it.
Pella windows are constructed of the highest quality. No drafts.
Yeah, sure. Okay. No drafts. Got it. There's more than one draft?
No, but Pella should be everyone's number one pick because right now at Pella Windows and Doors of Wisconsin, get no interest financing options or free glass upgrades when you order by April 30th. Our talented designers and installers can match your unique home through dramatic sizes, custom colors, finishes, profiles, product types, and more, along with durable and distinguished details. All Pella products stand the test of time, which is why we confidently offer the best wood warranty in the industry.
So where is the draft?
Coon. Get no interest financing options or free glass upgrades at PellaWI.com.
Certain restrictions apply. Ends 4/30/2025.
Why is life better with American Family Insurance? Because every policy comes with something very special. A trusted agent who's there to help protect your dreams by finding the right coverage at the right price. Save up to 23% when you bundle home and auto. American Family Insurance. Get a quote and find an agent at amfam.com.
Products not available in every state. Visit amfam.com to learn how discounts may apply to you. American Family Mutual Insurance Company, SI, and its operating company, 6000 American Parkway, Madison, Wisconsin.
Welcome back to Bucks Talk.
Grimes fires a three, shot no good, and there it is. Giannis picks up his 10th rebound, already has a triple-double with 8:30 to go in the third. Bucks lead by 2. Antetokounmpo right of the lane. Euro steps his way to the rim, counted and a foul. Colin Castleton just not in a good defensive position.
Yeah, Giannis with an early triple-double tonight, early in the second half. And this Bucks team, after, to put it mildly, a very, very sluggish start to pour it on and get that much-needed win against the Philadelphia 76ers. We talked about this coming into the game. You understood what the assignment was. It's a Philly team that we've talked about this a number of times. It's easy to point to these teams and say that's a must-win or that's a game they're absolutely going to win or have to win. I've mentioned many times my feelings on the old must-win adage. The only time you have a must-win is when you're facing elimination. We've seen the Bucks and other teams, to be fair, fall victim to playing the undermanned team, the shorthanded team that comes back to beat you. It's not just the Bucks. We've seen more and more of it throughout the course of the NBA season here, and Doc Rivers has talked about that. But look, the big thing to keep in mind here is this iteration of the 76ers, it's not a good team. You don't have Joel Embiid. You don't have Paul George. You don't have Tyrese Maxey. They had 8 players on their injury report tonight. They were all listed as out. Gerson Yabusele may have been the most recognizable name on the floor for the Philadelphia 76ers. But it's different when you look at the players on the floor versus what the front office wants. Like, the front office knows what they're doing. Philadelphia has a top 6 protected pick that they traded away. It belongs to the Oklahoma City Thunder if it falls outside of the top 6. If it's in the top 6, Philadelphia keeps it. And as the season was chugging along here and it became more and more apparent that this was, in fact, going to be a season from hell for Philly, they said, all right, we know Joel Embiid needs some procedures. By the way, that announcement, yesterday, that he's going to get the knee scoped. Doc Rivers said before the game tonight, Embiid told him the last time the Bucks played the Sixers, that was the Hubie Brown game, when Joel Embiid was on the floor out there with him. Look, I'm going to have another surgery here. It's much different than what the organization wants versus the players on the floor. Guys are competitive. You put them on the floor, they are going to try to win games. It's not as simple as saying, look, we're going to play you, don't try to win, because we're trying to get a good draft pick. And I think that's a lot of what you saw in the opening quarter. It's not all of what you saw in the opening quarter. There were some self-inflicted wounds there for the Bucks. There are some things that, it's not even we have to monitor. We have been monitoring, and I think there's still some elevated concern in some of these spots. Maybe there is help on the horizon. Maybe it's 2 games away, if you know what we're talking about. But turnovers and second chance points, those continue to be a problem for the Bucks. Those were a big problem in the opening quarter tonight. Their perimeter defense was not great. The 76ers, one by one, all the names we said were out. You wouldn't have known watching this game when you saw Justin Edwards, Jared Butler, Ricky Council, Quentin Grimes getting into the paint, winning their battles on the perimeter, opening up clean looks. Adem Bona with a career game tonight. He had scored 51 points combined in the previous 5 games. He had 28 points tonight. So this wasn't just it's those pesky 76ers, the young guys that are getting an opportunity to play tonight. They're trying to win. There were parts of that. The Bucks also, the turnovers, the offensive rebounding started to improve, at least the turnovers as the game progressed. The offensive rebounding did not. It's another game where the opposition had 20 or more points via the second chance variety. 11 offensive rebounds for Philly, 23 second chance points tonight. We've been saying it over and over and over. That has to improve. And maybe it's as simple as Tuesday night when Bobby Portis is eligible to return and rejoin this team. The Bucks go back to being a pretty good defensive rebounding team. Bobby Portis has been pretty good at that. Bucks are in the, I believe, 80th percentile in those minutes where Bobby Portis is on the floor. 80th percentile defensive rebounding team. Maybe it's that. Maybe it's more than that, right? Maybe there's some other things. Maybe there's some personnel groupings that aren't quite working as well. But that number has to improve. I mentioned this a couple of times tonight. On average, the last 3 or 4 games, Bucks have been outscored by 20 points. Average, 20 points. When you combine those 2 stats, second chance points, in other words, what you get from your reloads, offensive rebounds, and what you do with those, and then points off of turnovers. It's a Bucks team that has really struggled with transition defense of late. It's an area that Doc Rivers talked about. We greatly improved that. It's one of the bigger things we stood behind earlier in the season. When you look at that 2-8 start, what the Bucks did since then, what was the reason for that turnaround? Their defense was much better. Guys started hitting shots, which is frankly the biggest part of it. When we joke all the time it's a make or miss league, Gary Trent Jr. started knocking down shots. That first, week and a half, 2 weeks of the season, you had Taurean Prince hitting shots. That was it. Guys started to make shots. That's a big piece of it. But they cleaned up the defense. They cleaned up their transition defense especially. And we've seen this defense sit right around the top 10 all season long. Those have all started to take hits the last couple of weeks. Not having Bobby Portis, a big piece of that. And look, for as much criticism and as maligned as Bobby Portis can be at times on the defensive end of the floor, you have to view it under this lens. Playing defense is finishing the possession. Doc talked about this again. He's mentioned it a couple of times. But what Red Auerbach used to always tell me, and Doc Rivers isn't the only coach to point this out. Red Auerbach wasn't the only coach to point this out. This is common sense stuff. But get the ball. Don't give up the ball. When we talk about it's a numbers game, it's not just, hey, 3 is worth more than 2. You want to take more 3s than 2s. No, you want to take more shots than the opposition. And that's the other thing. We can point to those combined points, the second chance points and points off of turnovers. The Bucks getting outscored handily in those categories the past few games here. But you want to take more shots than the opposition, and that's another thing the Bucks have not been doing. Look, even tonight, and there's a caveat to apply to this, but even tonight, 76ers took more shots than the Bucks. You did take more free throws than Philly, so that's a big reason for it. But, we've seen 18, 19, I think it was 48 was the number in the last 3 games. 48. Last 2 games of that 4-game losing streak and the win against the Phoenix Suns. The opponents took 48 more shots than the Bucks. Those are the things. For as great as Giannis looks, those are the things you have to push forward here. You got to clean up that math problem. It can't be 18, 19, 20 is the difference that the opponent's taking more shots than you. It's simply not sustainable. And why we say your defense is taking a hit with the absence of Bobby Portis is defensive rebounding. Finishing the possession. Secure the basketball. Don't give up those second chance opportunities. It's something Bobby Portis has done well. And unfortunately for the Bucks, it's not just Bobby Portis. It's Bobby Portis goes down. Only 2 games left on that 25-game suspension, though. That's the good news. But Bobby Portis goes down to that suspension. Jericho Sims goes down a handful of games into Bobby's suspension, just as he was really starting to come on and show you quite a bit. I think quite a bit more than most of us anticipated for as many Jericho Sims heads there were out there that were really pushing for Jericho Sims. Got to play more. This is a guy that we're really excited about to bring on at the trade deadline. He really started to show you that with his athleticism, his rim protection, even as an undersized guy, but what he allowed you to do defensively to switch everything. And it goes back to the summer when we heard the entire front office and collectively, the Bucks as a group, using the message of versatility. Right? We want more versatility. We want to be able to play different. And I kept saying this over the summer, earlier in the season as well. You know who you are, those of you that are very anti-Brook Lopez, who, by the way, had another nice game tonight. Having defensive versatility does not mean getting rid of Brook Lopez, and you need Jericho Sims. He's your starting center. He's a guy that can switch and play on the perimeter. That's not what it means. When you say having defensive versatility, what it means is what the Bucks slowly and quietly started to assemble just after the trade deadline and moving into the All-Star break, where you look at Brook Lopez as your traditional rim protector. You can play Giannis and Brook together as twin towers, 2 bigs, where one is going to be the rim protector, one's going to be the helper. You beat one wave, there's another 7-footer waiting for you at the rim. Kyle Kuzma gets added to the mix as another big wing that can really defend what we've seen Kyle Kuzma take 1 through 4. Comfortably, you can throw him out there, 2s, 3s, 4s. You got that out there on the perimeter. You got Taurean Prince to throw out there. Ryan Rollins, right? I know Damian Lillard was the guy getting the heavy share of the minutes and starting, but what we've seen from Ryan Rollins of late and how many times we've heard Doc Rivers talk about Ryan Rollins' defense is NBA level. He is a lockdown defender, and we've seen him on a number of occasions take guys out of the game offensively. Look, I get we're not talking about Jalen Brunson or Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum or those types of players, but go back to that win against the Phoenix Suns when Doc pointed out, look, he completely took the Suns point guard out of the mix. Yes, it's Colin Gillespie that we're talking about, but it forced the Phoenix Suns to say, all right, well, Devin Booker or somebody else, you're going to have to bring the ball up the floor, and our point guard is going to have to play off ball. That's what Ryan Rollins has brought to this mix, and that's what makes it very intriguing, where even if we're to assume, and I do want to get to the good news and the update that we got in the past couple of days here, and Doc touched on that as well. But if we're to assume Damian Lillard is out in the playoffs, and I think that is the assumption you have to take. Again, another thing Doc addressed I want to get to. But Ryan Rollins gives you that defensive versatility. That's what the versatility piece is. You can have Brook Lopez that plays one way. You can bring on Jericho Sims that plays a completely different way. You have a guy like Bobby Portis that is a rebounding machine that gives you that component to your defense of securing the ball and finishing the possession. That's the versatility. And now Kyle Kuzma, who can take on those types of assignments. Ryan Rollins, who was an afterthought, who wasn't a part of the rotation early in the season. Ryan Rollins in the mix. That's the versatility the Bucks have started to build up. Just as you were building it, it felt like all of it got snatched out from under you by way of injuries, the suspension to Bobby Portis, you name it. Just the worst luck that this team could get hit with when you felt like, all right, they're starting to build something here. But now you're 2 days away from getting at least one of those pieces back. We don't have a clear timeline on Jericho Sims. All we do know and all we're working off of is at the time of that surgery, the message from the Bucks in the statement that they released was he's hopeful, anticipating to be back for the playoffs. And now you're 2 weeks away from that as well. The update on Damian Lillard, I do want to touch on that because it is a notable one. It is one that deserves a mention, but I still think you have to go forward with the assumption you don't have Damian Lillard. Just assume Ryan Rollins is your starting point guard. Kevin Porter Jr. is backing him up. If you get him back, great. But the assumption, even with the good news or the good update that we got from Chris Haynes and Shams Charania as well, and Doc Rivers addressed, even with that, that should be your assumption go forward. But that versatility was there earlier, and now it looks like slowly but surely the versatility is starting to return. And when I mentioned 2 days, or 2 games, I should say, it's 5 days technically. That is the return of Bobby Portis. You are now 13-10 through these first 23 games of the 25-game suspension for Bobby Portis. Your numbers have been middle of the pack on both ends of the floor, though you could argue, look, middle of the pack is good for where this offense was earlier, but you've started to weather the storm. Can you go 15-10? If you can, that's a really good weathering of the storm in that 25-game suspension for Bobby Portis. So you're going to get that piece back next week. When you get Jericho Sims back remains to be seen. When and if you get Damian Lillard back also remains to be seen. But that update that we heard first from Shams Charania and what Doc Rivers had to say about it and Damian Lillard's status, we'll get into that conversation coming up after this on Bucks Talk.
You're listening to Bucks Talk.
Save big money on auto accessories at Menards. We have what you need to keep your vehicle looking like new. Give your car the care it needs with Turtle Wax Max Power Car Wash. It provides maximum strength cleaning. The more wash you use, the stronger the cleaning power becomes, giving your vehicle a showroom shine. Check out our wide selection of auto care accessories in store, or check out our weekly flyer on Menards.com for more great deals.
Save big money at Menards.
Good Karma Brands is proud to be an equal opportunity employer. Our policy is to provide equal opportunity employment, development, and advancement to all current and potential teammates. If you are an organization that maintains a job bank, provides employment information, or gives job referrals, you may request to be placed on the station's mailing list for future career opportunities. To learn more about careers at Good Karma Brands, please email careers@goodkarmabrands.com.
A Brewers group outing is the best way to celebrate any special occasion. Whether it's a birthday party, anniversary, or bachelor party, baseball is better with a group. Grab your crew of just 15 or more for an event you won't forget. Brewers account reps make your day at the ballpark a breeze. Plus, get set up with customizable tailgate spaces, seating blocks in your favorite location at American Family Field, and much more. Start planning your group outing now at brewers.com/groups.
Woo! Hey, this is Ben Brust from Kyle Brust and Ortman on ESPN Wisconsin. People can't stop screaming about the Screamin' Sicilian frozen pizza, and no wonder. There's plenty to scream about, like the buttery stone-fired crust, secret recipe tomato sauce, mounds of whole milk mozzarella, and tons of premium toppings. Find Screamin' Sicilian in your local grocer's freezer and find out for yourself why Sport called Screamin' Sicilian's Holy Pepperoni Frozen Pizza the best of the best. Screamin' Sicilian, taste what all the screamin' is about.
Hey, it's Brad Nortman, and I've got to tell you about my go-to car wash, Tsunami Express. Get your ride looking its best and ride the wave at Tsunami Express Car Wash, Milwaukee's fan favorite for that perfect shine. Sign up for a monthly membership and enjoy unlimited washes for less than $1 a day. Skip the wait with the fast lane and take advantage of great perks. With locations in Midtown Milwaukee, Waukesha, Greenfield, Oak Creek, and Mount Pleasant, Tsunami Express has you covered. Tsunami Express Car Wash. Wash, chill, repeat. Visit TsunamiExpress.com to learn more.
The Roundball Repartee returns. This is Bucks Talk.
Just playmaking. You know, him getting his teammates involved. Obviously, he's going to be able to go get it whenever he wants to. So, without having Dame out there, it's been a challenge, very challenging, along with Bobby and Jericho. But Giannis knows he had, and Doc mentioned it this morning, and has been mentioning it, that Giannis has to think more like a point forward, and he's already built like that, so it's not too much of a challenge for him. It's just now, him understanding the organization, making sure we're in the right spots, making sure our timing is on point and the ball is moving when it's supposed to move on time, on target.
Yeah, the point forward mentality, and Doc talked about this after the Phoenix Suns game too. Of Giannis is our point guard. We don't have Damian Lillard. He's the guy that has to get guys set, and a couple of notable things in this one tonight in relation to that. You saw more of that takeover from Giannis, but what really stood out a couple of times was Pat Connaughton kind of directing traffic and dictating to guys where they need to be in relation to Giannis. You could see it on the baseline where Pat Connaughton would kind of call out sets. Brooke did it a couple of times too with Taurean Prince of, no, look, they're collapsing in the paint, and I'm going to roll there and get to the dunker spot. You get out there, get above the break, give Giannis some space and an outlet to get the ball to. Pat Connaughton did that a number of times tonight. You could see him giving direction to Kevin Porter Jr., I believe Ryan Rollins on one of those as well. Gary Trent, too, of, look, get to that part of the corner. That's where the outlet needs to be. That's where he's going to be looking. And Pat Connaughton is an interesting guy as we move into the stretch drive here, because I think Pat Connaughton's been pretty good so far this season. And I get that's an unpopular opinion. But look, the big thing with Pat is, well, it's really two things. The athleticism is not what it once was. And that's the toughest hurdle to overcome in this league especially. And, if you follow Thinking Basketball by Ben Taylor, he did this piece a couple of weeks ago where he broke down the debate over our era is better than this era that you oftentimes hear from guys that played in the 90s and early 2000s, kind of opining for how the game was so much better when they played than it is now. And, I mean, who are we to say if it was or wasn't? But what is notable is the game is much different now than it was then. And the biggest piece is athleticism. If you're clamoring for the 90s back to the basket game, that's fine. It was a different style of play. I get that. But Ben Taylor went back and did a rewatch and posted this. Look it up on YouTube and watch along to see how much the league has changed. Looking at that series between the Pistons and the Lakers, the biggest upset in finals history, if you look at the betting odds, where everybody just assumed the Lakers are going to win the championship. That was the Lakers team that just brought in Gary Payton and Karl Malone in the offseason, and you already had Kobe and Shaq out there. And here come the Pistons that manhandled the Lakers in that series. It was, I think Game 3, where the series shifted to Detroit. The Lakers, for the first 20 minutes of the half, We're at 19 points because of that Pistons defense that when you go back and watch it, it's all the defense we see now. But nobody was doing it back then. And that's the biggest difference, is it's a much more athletic game. When you talk about the biggest changes in all of the, X amount of games and X amount of days and the back-to-back discourse too, the biggest thing is the game requires so much more now. And that's why when you talk about players used to do this, well, there's a reason why it was easier or more palatable to play 5 games in 7 days and play back-to-backs. I'm not saying it was easy, but it wasn't a discussion. There was no such thing as tanking and load management back then because it wasn't the same game. Think about the ground that you have to cover now. Think about what bigs are doing. In the 90s, in the 2000s, well before that too, your big was playing in the post. And he was going from free throw line to free throw line, essentially. Was not going past that point. We talked about Jericho Sims switching out there. As much as a section of Bucks fans hate to see it, you see Brook Lopez on the perimeter. You're asked to do more because that's how the game has changed. And I mentioned that series in that video series that Ben Taylor did because you just see how radically different the game was with spacing, where guys were giving up open threes because that wasn't the game. You took threes. That was crazy, especially if you took a high volume of it. And in that series specifically, that's what made the Pistons so good, was they knew this is how the game is played. Zone defense just became legal a year or two before that series too, and the Pistons were the first team to really utilize that. But when you look at how that roster was constructed, that's how teams are built now. Ben Wallace, a versatile big that could play on the perimeter, that could take on multiple assignments. Rasheed Wallace as a second big. He had 2 rim protectors in that sense. Tayshaun Prince, a very good individual defender, had great length. Chauncey Billups and Rip Hamilton were smart team defenders and knew where to be. And piece by piece, clip by clip, you just see, yeah, that's what they do now. And okay, that's what's remarkable about this with the benefit of hindsight is, yeah, we didn't see teams play like this. And you just wondered, wow, why are the Pistons so different? They must be so physical. They must beat teams up. No, the Pistons were showing us this is where the league is headed. And that's what's made the game different. And that's where guys like Giannis stand out. Jericho Sims, right? To a much lesser extent than Giannis. But that's where that athleticism and versatility stands out. It's what the league is now. And it's what it didn't used to be. That's what the Bucks have been missing. They've had to play one specific way without Bobby Portis. Not just Bobby Portis. Without Bobby Portis, without Jericho Sims, you're kind of confined to we are what we are. This is what we have. And that's what you saw for a large part of last season, too. Going back to the playoffs. We talked about it on this show a couple of times. You look at the groupings that the Bucks played a season ago, and I think earlier in this season, certainly before the Bobby suspension and the injuries that hit this team, I do think there was a lot more optimism for a number of reasons because the pairing and the fit between Giannis and Damian Lillard was much better going off the eye test than it was a season ago. But your roster top to bottom was better, right? Even without a Chris Middleton and without what he gave you in that playoff series against the Indiana Pacers. Go back to the back half of last season in that playoff series and look at the minutes that were played by guys, how many minutes they were playing, how much you were leaning on Pat Connaughton, how much you were leaning on Pat Beverly and Jay Crowder. 2 guys that for all intents and purposes are no longer in the league. Pat Beverly isn't in the league. Jay Crowder is technically in the league. He no longer plays for the Sacramento Kings. And then you have Malik Beasley miscast all season long. He's having a great season with the Pistons. What he's doing with the Pistons is what you really should have been asking of Malik Beasley. It's a much different roster. And if you can get that group back and get healthy, I get the skepticism and I get the doubt that's going to be out there because, as I've mentioned a couple of times, the biggest difference between this year and last year is last year you had data points that if you chose to believe this team can do it. I believe in Giannis and Damian Lillard and Chris Middleton for that matter. You had enough data along the way that would back that up. The 5-man starting lineup, one of the best 5-man units in the league when you look at net rating. Their record against top 10 teams by way of net rating. Their net rating in those games. There were a number of things. The record against teams above 500. There are a lot of those things you could point to that you frankly don't have this season. So this season, as much as I say hope is not a strategy, hope is really what you're leaning on. But the roster construction and that versatility, if we can go back to that, is there much more this year if you're healthy than it was a season ago? Because to finish that point, you played what you had last year. You know, it's like the old line when you to cross sports here, you talk about running backs in football and specific types of guys, and you say, hey, you need 5 yards, I'm gonna give you 4. You need 2 yards, I'm gonna give you 4. That was the Bucs last year, right? We can only play this way, so this is all we're gonna do. And that's what you've seen of late for this group. But if you can get all these pieces back, that's not the case. So we know one of those pieces is coming back on Tuesday, and that's Bobby Portis. We think another one of those pieces is coming back shortly thereafter, and that's Jericho Sims. And the last one is, without question, the most important one. Is he coming back soon? Well, there was a report by Sham Charania yesterday on the Pat McAfee show that suggested, yes, he is going to be coming back. And Doc Rivers talked about that before the game tonight and had some rather interesting things to say about Damian Lillard and this team's approach. Maybe contradictory, but interesting things that he had to say. So we'll get into that. Those remarks by Doc Rivers coming up after this on Bucs Talk.
The Hardwood Homilies continue after this. This is Bucs Talk.
Hey, this is Mike from Infinity Exteriors. Buying a roof, siding, or windows can feel overwhelming. Hidden costs, confusing contracts. We don't play that game. We educate you so that you can decide. And when you know the facts, Infinity Exteriors is the clear choice. Since 1997, we've installed peace of mind with no surprise upcharges, flexible budgets, and immediate financing. Infinity Exteriors, saving our communities from unscrupulous contractors. Visit infinityexteriors.com.
Escape the city and relax at Lake Lawn Resort in beautiful Delavan, Wisconsin. Enjoy outdoor activities on Delavan Lake. Tee off at the lakeside Majestic Oaks Golf Course or unwind at the award-winning Calidora Spa. With both indoor and outdoor pools, there's fun for the whole family. Take a cruise on the Lake Lawn Queen. Explore stunning shores and historic landmarks. And enjoy delicious food and drinks on board. Book your stay today at lakelawnresort.com, where everything is better at the lake.
Let's talk about home turf. Your lawn is a reflection of your pride, hard work, and even competitive spirit. If you want a yard that makes the neighbors stop and stare, you need the right plan. That's where Weedman Lawn Care comes in. Weedman's lawn care program is kid and pet friendly, uses golf course quality fertilizer, and has an effective weed treatment to dominate any issue. Get a free quote of Weedman's winning formula for your yard at weedman.com and get 50% off your first treatment. That's weedman.com. Weedman for the win.
At Gruber Law Offices, we take great pride in helping those who have trusted us after a serious accident. Our team has the knowledge, resources, and experience to get you the results you deserve. Don't wait to get the help you need. Make the right call. Call Gruber Law Offices today. Proud partner of your Milwaukee Bucks. One call, that's all.
Wisconsin is still cattle country. And that's why Bunzel's chose to stay close to home to hand select the finest beef. Quality goes into everything they do, from Bunzel's expansive array of meats, homemade specialty sausages, and their award-winning beef jerky. It just isn't a proper holiday meal without Bunzel's top quality cuts on the dinner table. Tasting is believing. Visit Bunzel's at 90th and Burleigh or bunzels.com.
This is Bucs Talk.
All the great guys that's come through this league, they make the people around them great as well. And so, you know, he's got the ability, the skill set. He's more than capable, the mindset to be able to do that. And that's something he has to do, you know, until we get Dame back. And, you know, he's got to be the leader of our team in terms of making plays and being the first one to do the dirty work as well on the other side of the ball.
It's Darvin Ham talking about Giannis. And again, to go back to how we started the show, Giannis and his historic night, 35 points, 20 assists, 17 rebounds. The 20 assists are a career high for Giannis. It's not a Bucks high. That was Ramon Sessions, who had 24 in a game, 20 years ago, I believe that was. But it is the third time in league history we have seen a stat line of 35, 20, 15. It is the first time that the 20 in there has been assists. Nikola Jokic and Wilt Chamberlain each had 35 or more points, 20 or more rebounds, and 15 or more assists. But Giannis, this is the first time a player has ever had 35 or more points, 20 or more assists, and 15 or more rebounds. And, since we brought up the name Nikola Jokic, I saw a few people suggest, and it's tough to dispute. Look, Giannis overall, as much as we've seen some criticisms over the Bucks roster construction this season, overall, Giannis has had some pretty good teammates these past few years. Like you don't regularly win 60 games with just one guy, or at least win 60 games once and then regularly be in the top 3 in the Eastern Conference up until this year. You don't do that with just one guy. But you look a lot of times at the stats that Nikola Jokic puts up. He had a 30-20-20, the first ever 30-20-20 triple-double earlier this season. And, you look at some of the pieces that Denver has been down, and I saw a few people suggest, maybe this is the stretch where, granted, there's only 6 games left, but maybe this is where you see similar types of performances from Giannis because it's really on him without Damian Lillard and without some of those other pieces. But without Damian Lillard for how long? So before the game, and actually let's start here. Shams Charania yesterday said that Damian Lillard is making some pretty good progress and that there is a lot more optimism that he is going to, in fact, return this season. And I think he even said potentially a week or so away from getting clearance to do some on-court things. I know he's been on the court and he's been doing things like shooting. That's about it. That's where you're going to cap it as long as you're on blood thinners. But Shams' report was this was something even before the press release and announcement came out, something the Bucks were aware of. They caught early, and he had been on blood thinners earlier than that, and they've seen that clot reduce significantly, that they've continued to really grow their optimism that he is, in fact, going to be able to return this season. Doc was asked about it before the game tonight, in that, I didn't see, and I think it was Eric Name that asked him, I didn't see Dame out here. Did Damian Lillard make the trip with you guys? Because that was one of the other big questions. Hey, is he going to be able to travel and fly with you guys for these road trips? And Doc said, no, he did not. We said, you know what, let's just keep him back because we got great reports on him. The numbers were phenomenal. So we figured, why mess with any of this in terms of flight and see if that triggers anything else? Like, we got good news. Let's keep it there. Let's keep him back. Let's continue to do everything we're doing to monitor this and work on this. And added, we have much more hope today than we had 3 days ago. So I think a lot of Bucks fans will see that and say, hey, he's clearly coming back. Even though we've cautioned, just assume he's not, right? Don't set yourself up for that disappointment. And this isn't a pain tolerance thing. This is blood clots. Something potentially fatal. And historically, I get everyone's body is different, every situation is different, but you typically don't see guys back from a blood clot in weeks. Victor Wembanyama's season shut down. Ausar Thompson had them in January last year. His season was shut down. Chris Bosh never played again because of them. So let's keep that part in mind. But Doc Rivers very optimistic and said, great news, great numbers. Let's not risk it. We have much more hope today than we had 3 days ago. Now, the very next question was about your offense. Right now, you're playing without Damian Lillard. How do you balance that? How do you, kind of juggle between here's the offense without Dame, here's the offense without Giannis, and here's what we'll start to install. And Doc said there is no balance. We don't have Damian Lillard. There's no guarantee we'll have him. So one quote goes from, we feel pretty good, and definitely have a lot more hope today than we did 3 days ago to the very next time, saying there's no guarantee we will have him. We don't know how to play without him in the long term, and, we haven't been great at it, so we got to continue to work at it. I think right there it shows you, for as much optimism as there is, of we got good test results. Things are looking good for Damian Lillard. You're still not out of the woods yet. And for something as serious as this is, I'm not suggesting they wouldn't be otherwise, but you absolutely have to be 150% certain of he's good. Everything's fine here. There's no potential impact. Nothing that could bubble up. None of that. We feel more than comfortable. You do have quite a bit of time. And the other important thing is this. Again, I was never overly concerned the Bucks were going to fall into the play-in tournament. But as of today, with this win and with what we've seen from the teams chasing the Bucks, with 6 games left, you're now 5 games up on those teams that are 7-8. So it would take a monumental collapse by the Bucks and an undefeated run by those teams, or at least a 5-1 run from the Atlanta Hawks to catch you. So you do feel like that door is just about shut, and the important part there is it gives you another week. Season ends next weekend. If you're not in the play-in tournament, you don't play again until the following Saturday at the earliest, potentially Sunday. So it buys you some more time on that front. We'll take a look at what's up next for the Bucks. They head to Miami to take on the Heat Saturday nights for Game 2 of this 3-game road trip. We'll preview that matchup and wrap things up after this on Bucks Talk.
Stick around. Bucks Talk continues next.
Fisco is always there for your auto body care. When accidents happen, Fisco Auto Body on Forest Home in Franklin is there when you need them. Got a broken mirror? They'll take care of it. Dented bumper? Scratch paint? Fisco Auto Body will take care of it. If there's any damage you need fixed, Fisco has you covered. Their expert workmanship is guaranteed for the life of your vehicle. So stop in for all of your auto bumps and dings. Once again, you know the line. That's Fisco.
It's time to show off your skills and earn a pair of Bucks tickets for the regular season finale April 13th. Now's the time of year when we're all trying to get buckets. At home, on the driveway, in the gym, or even in the office. Send us a video of your best hoops trick shots. Use hashtag BucksTrickShot and show us what you've got. It's the Bucks Trick Shot Contest. Send your shots now through April 8th on Twitter at ESPN Milwaukee using hashtag BucksTrickShot.
So many of our youth carry unimaginable burdens. Anger, depression, even thoughts of suicide. At Rawhide Youth Services, we recognize their pain. We help them find hope and healing. For those that need a second chance at life, we refuse to give up on them. Please be a part of our life-saving work. When you donate your used vehicle to Rawhide, you're helping change the lives of countless youth in our communities. Go to rawhide.org/donate and help them realize a brighter future today.
Hi, Drew and Jonathan Scott here, reminding you that a lot of life's firsts are better with help from American Family Insurance. Like your first home expansion, or your first big lightning strike. There's a first for everything. Get the right home policy at the right price with the right help from American Family's agents. Life's better when you're under American Family's roof. Insure carefully, dream fearlessly. Get a quote and find an agent at amfam.com.
Products not available in every state. American Family Mutual Insurance Company SI and its operating company 6000 American Parkway, Madison, Wisconsin.
Who's looking for a deal? Well, Cousin Subs has a better deal just for you. Cousin's new $10 meal deals are now available online only. Choose between a 7.5-inch ham and provolone, turkey breast, or veggie sub, a bag of chips or regular fry, a regular fountain beverage, and cookie at cousinsubs.com or on the mobile app for just $10. Now that's a better deal. Cousin Subs, we believe in better. Available at participating locations only. Offer subject to change without notice.
You're listening to Bucks Talk.
All right, Saturday night road trip continues for the Bucks. They head to Miami to take on the Heat. A 7 o'clock tip Central Time, so an 8 o'clock game in Miami. But the Heat had won 6 straight games, so they had a 10-game losing streak. And then follow that up with a 6-game win streak where all 6 of those wins were by double digits, including last night against the Boston Celtics. The win streak did come to an end tonight. So you're going to be facing a Heat team that saw their 6-game win streak snapped, and then you have one of your two final back-to-backs this season, Sunday in New Orleans against the Pelicans. It's a Pels team that, much like the opponent you face tonight, has basically shut down everyone. So this is a big opportunity for the Bucks to close out this season by stacking wins with 2 games left against the Pelicans, a winnable game against Miami, and a game against the Minnesota Timberwolves where, again, Bobby Portis will be eligible to return. Saturday nights from South Beach, the Bucks and the Miami Heat. It's a 7 o'clock tip. 6:30 is when our pregame coverage begins. And as always, be sure to stick around after the game for Bucks Talk. We will catch up with you then.
Oh my gosh, Allie, did you look at Janet's roof? Ugh, it's like